And like all delinquent fathers, I'm going to give you hope that I will continue to do these European rundowns. Honestly, I probably will be able to. I just usually take, a week or two off, Christmas to New Year's, to be with the family. But we are absolutely back and cooking with this stuff. And we've got a lot of Europa League scores to dive into. Sorry, that was probably not the intro you were expecting. Anyways, Europa League played match day 7 out of 8. All the matches happened in one day. And if you missed any of the nonsense, I'm here to tell you about it. Now, Scottish football has sucked, but we start with Bologna against Celtic. Wilfred Nancy is gone, proving once and for all that your Nan couldn't manage Celtic, and then Celtic had an absolutely bizarre match against Bologna. And this one is probably going to come back to haunt them in some way, because Celtic, despite the fact it got a 34th minute red card to Rio Hatate, took a 2-0 lead thanks to American Austin Trusty. Hatate, by the way, scoring a goal before he got sent off. So just an incredible 34 minutes for him. The 2-0 lead was then undone in the second half by the bologna sandwich themselves. This bringing the table to a grinding, painful position for Celtic as they lock into 24th. Again, if you hold on to the win here, you're at 10 points. You are basically safe in the playoff. Celtic is anywhere but safe. They're the only team with 8 points. Right, they are the swing vote between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to the playoff positions. They are the last hope, as we will come to learn, for Scottish football here in general. For Bologna, coming out and being able to get this draw, I believe fully guaranteed, well, it does. They're fully guaranteed in a playoff position and keeps them just within striking distance of maybe a top 8 finish. Bologna has got a road trip to Maccabi Tel Aviv. And Maccabi Tel Aviv is the worst team in the Europa League right now. So that is a very good chance to pick up 3 points and maybe tack on a goal difference. Look at the goal difference column, by the way. Unbelievably close. They would be up to 15 points in that instance with a chance to catch Ferencvaros and Roma that are hanging up out there in the top 8. So Bologna could backdoor that with a win thanks to these 2 goals. But Celtic in a very dangerous position in this particular spot. I'm incredibly disappointed in the way Scottish football has played. I've always kind of rooted for the Scottish League, but Celtic got dominated in this match. Obviously, when you get a guy sent off in the 34th minute, that's going to have some sort of an effect, but these are gaudy numbers. 36 shots for Bologna is insane, right? Scottish football seems to be on the way down because whatever they're doing right now just isn't necessarily working, and you're just not producing clubs, even the big clubs and Rangers and Celtic that carried the torch, that are able to actually, compete at the level that they would like to be able to compete at. The next match was Brann and Midtjylland. We got an all Scandinavia showdown that ended up being a completely wild shootout. Midtjylland going out with a 2-1 lead at halftime. They had the lead once, twice, 3 times. They lost it all 3 times. A penalty in the 90 plus 10 for Brann to be able to actually close the gap for a 3rd time here. This was played in Bergen, Norway. So a nice, warm, balmy temperature for this one, I'm sure. But these are 2 teams that would have gone into this hoping to be able to get into the playoff positions. For Midtjylland, this draw is a little heartbreaking because with a win, they would have actually been able to guarantee a top 8 finish already. They have not fully locked up that top 8 finish yet. So you've got the lead 3 separate times. 3 separate times, and you can't put it away to guarantee that you get a bye. They go into their final match against Dinamo Zagreb. Dinamo Zagreb down here in 20th. They're playing for their life, but Midtjylland will be the favorite, particularly playing that match at home. They will be the favorite in order to get a top 8 spot in that position. Brann, on the other hand, this draw is huge. Being able to pull back 3 goals in succession with the late drama allows them to stay in the playoff positions for the moment. Even if they'd lost, if they'd only lost by a goal, they would have still been ahead of Celtic. They would have bumped Celtic. Even if they had lost, they would still be in the playoff positions, but it would have been a little more tenuous. Now you need a couple of these teams to actually come around and win a match in order to knock Brann out, and there is not as big of a chase pack as the Champions League. So if you're looking at the Champions League positions and you're going, wow, this is going to be a really chaotic final day, Europa League doesn't offer as many potential chaos moments. There are less teams that are still in play alive for a spot in the first place. But this was definitely an insane match. I will say, though, that even though Brann did get this call, I don't agree with this. I don't think this is a penalty. It's really hard to call that handball in that situation. But it was rather calmly dispatched. That's an amazing penalty when you think about what's on the line for Brann in that situation. So congrats to them. The Norwegians are rolling on, and a great crowd on hand as well. Fenerbahce and Aston Villa. This one was marred by a little argument between Yuri Tielemans and Unai Emery, but Aston Villa got the win that it needed. This is not an easy away day. Fenerbahce is the second best team in Turkey. It is a long trip. It is a wild atmosphere. Jadon Sancho was able to grab the goal for Aston Villa to get things started, and they just stayed started for Villa, who were able to hang on to it, even though Fenerbahce had an impressive 63% possession in this match. I don't know what was behind the argument. Might make a separate video about it, depending on how much it boils over, but Unai Emery even gave Yuri Tielemans a little bit of a shove, which is definitely a wild thing to see. But for Aston Villa, this result was basically the clincher. Villa, with a win at Fenerbahce, has guaranteed a top 8 position in the Europa League. They get a bye through the playoff round. As a Premier League team in the Europa League, that's what you should expect to be able to get. Obviously, Villa's in the title chase in the Prem as well, so they are at a real high watermark. But there is a very real chance Aston Villa could be in the hunt for a European trophy. They have set themselves up very well through the league stage thus far. For Fenerbahce, this loss virtually condemns them to the playoff positions. They would need to win and have basically everything go right. I don't even know if it's mathematically possible for them to catch and pick off Real Betis in the 8th spot. I would assume that it's not, given the number of teams between them and there. The best they can hope for is to finish in the top 16, so somewhere from 9 to 16 to be a seeded team, get the second match at home, play a worse team in the first knockout round. Their final match is against FCSB, who's down here and playing for their life. They'll be playing for their life at home, which is going to make that a little bit more challenging for Fenerbahce, and Turkey and Romania have some spicy history that I'm sure is going to make for a very exciting atmosphere. But Feyenoord picks up a win that it desperately needed. It needed the win to even give itself a chance to make it in there on the final day. Sturm Graz, with 3 consecutive losses, is now officially eliminated on 4 points. Kind of surprised they even got to those 4 points, considering how bad all of the qualifying has been, and you see Salzburg's kind of near them too. There's just no Austrian team that's putting in a good performance in Europe this year. It has not happened. Feyenoord, after the huge performance from Dutch teams last year, is echoing the fact that the Dutch teams are coming back down to earth a little bit. Final match for Feyenoord's at home against Real Betis, who of course is up in the top 8. They're on the road as well. Feyenoord has to win that match to have a chance. That is a big ask. And for Betis, that is probably one of the easier matches you could get to try and lock up a top 8 place. So good spot for them. Sturm Graz, like I said, eliminated. Freiburg out of Germany beats Maccabi Tel Aviv 1-0. Took them a very long time to find the goal, but they were the better team throughout. 21 shots to 4, way up on the XG. 82nd minute goal was what Freiburg needed. Obviously not a regular European team, Freiburg, but they've looked the part. They have not lost. 5 wins, 2 draws. They have been absolutely ripping through this, and they are very close to guaranteeing qualification. I think hell would have to freeze over for Freiburg not to be a top 8 team. They are on the road against Lille, which is a team that, they could lose that match, but even if they lose that match, they'd need basically everybody below them all the way down to Porto to win their matches to then knock out Freiburg, plus a multi-goal difference gain for Porto. That I mean, the odds of that happening are obviously very low, and Freiburg is not lost. They will be the favorite likely in that match against Lille, who's all the way down in 21st. I think Freiburg's looking good. Maccabi Tel Aviv has 1 draw. They have a minus 17 goal difference. They're just not on the level. They played way better in this than they probably would have expected, and they've been eliminated already going into that match. Red Star goes on the road against Malmo, picks up a huge 3 points for the Serbian side that locks them into a playoff spot and gives Red Star a real opportunity to jump into the top 8. While they play at home against Celta Vigo, Red Star's got a big home field advantage. They are football terrorists, essentially. This is Haram ball at its peak. Look at what Red Star has done. 1-0 win. They have now scored 6 goals in 7 matches. Somehow they have 4 wins from that. They have conceded 5 goals in those 7 matches. The only teams that have played better defense are Lyon, who is 6 wins, 1 loss. Aston Villa, who is 6 wins, 1 loss. Freiburg, who literally has not lost. And then there is the random appearance of Victoria Plzen, who have also been playing absolute haram ball. Can't wait to talk about what they're up to. So Red Star, they might just be able to fall backwards. They might be able to Paraguay their way into the top 8 against Celta Vigo. If they can muster up a 1-0 win, they have a real chance. They can catch, at least in terms of points, up to Braga and Midtjylland, and they can clear Roma, Ferencvaros, and Betis if any of those teams happen to lose. So they need help, and they're not going to pad their goal difference with the way that they're playing football right now, but they're getting the job done. For Malmo, they were already out. 4th straight loss for them. Terrible effort from the big Swedish Turkish club this time around. PAOK Thessaloniki. The Greek teams have hands. We saw it from Olympiacos in the Champions League. PAOK Thessaloniki has raised, it's not just Olympiacos, even though they're the one that's won the Conference League title recently. It's a couple of teams. PAOK Thessaloniki obviously being one of them that have raised their level. And I'm expecting a resurgence from the Greek national team at some point, given the way these teams are playing. I don't know what's happened in the league, increased investment, increased interest, whatever. Thessaloniki left it to the second half, found both of their goals there, and they were the better team. If you assess XG, they were in it in possession, right? Like they were the team that was supposed to win this game. Now, for Real Betis, if they'd won this match, they'd basically be guaranteed in the top 8, so that is a bitter pill to swallow. The win puts PAOK Thessaloniki locked into the playoff positions with one match to go, going into a final match where they're on the road against group-leading Lyon. Now, the advantage here for PAOK Thessaloniki is that they are playing against the Lyon team that's already clinched. Lyon is in the top 8. They've got a bye on that first round. PAOK Thessaloniki trying to get there. They hopefully, in their case, will be playing against a bunch of backups. Lyon will try and rotate in that match, but it is still, you'd rather play against a Maccabi Tel Aviv or something, a team that you'd be favored to beat. And at home, that's just a little silver lining for them. Real Betis has that match against Feyenoord that they should be able to win, so they haven't fully bottled it yet. The Haram Ball professionals tied for the best defensive record in the entire tournament. Victoria Plzen. It's what they do. Took an early lead, but unfortunately for them, got a red card in the 45 plus 4th minute, which allowed Porto to work its way back into the game. They missed a penalty in the 45th minute, but in the 90th minute, Porto was able to find a goal. Huge goal, heartbreaking goal for Victoria Plzen, because Victoria Plzen would have been able to fully guarantee its spot in the playoff if it had won. Now, Victoria Plzen, rather fascinatingly, has still not lost in this entire tournament, but because they have drawn 5 of their 7 matches, they are still very much in a whole pile of parity. Now, Plzen goes into its final match with a chance to go on the road against Basel, a team playing for their life. Basel, if they win at home, has a chance to get into the playoff positions. Their goal difference is good enough. They have that opportunity. Obviously, beating Plzen is incredibly difficult, though, because nobody has been able to do it. And if Plzen can go on the road there and find a win, there is mathematically a possibility, I believe, they could jump into the top 8. That's probably not going to happen. But what Plzen will want to do is finish from 9 to 16 and be a seeded team in the playoff round. That opportunity is still there for them. Now, for Porto, the draw is very frustrating because a win would have launched them into the top 8. They do have, obviously, one more match left. They're going to be playing at home against Rangers, where they will be favorites. And that means that Porto is going to be putting a lot of pressure on all of the teams 17 points and down. If Porto can beat Rangers by a couple of goals, which the way Rangers is playing, more than possible for Porto to produce, they could catch up to even Freiburg if Freiburg happens to lose. A win, and any of the teams in front of Porto up to Freiburg stumbles, Porto will be in the top 8. So that opportunity is still there, and that opportunity is still there courtesy of the draw. Plzen, honestly, my favorite team in Europe. They do this every year. It's amazing they manage to keep pulling it off and building a team that can do this. Young boys, they've not been particularly good in this cycle. Lyon goes on the road, finds a goal. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, haven't heard that name in a little while. He's out there for Lyon. He scores the winning goal for Lyon that guarantees a top 8 finish. They have a chance, of course, to win the entire table. They're out on goal difference right now. Young boys coming off a win in their previous match against Lille that pulled them into position. They're going to be one of the few teams that is in very real parity. Their goal difference is not good. They're on 9 points, which means, if they draw and Ludogorets wins and Celtic wins, then, Young boys is still going to be falling out. They're on the road against Stuttgart, too. Not an easy match. I'd say Young boys are one of the real candidates that if you can get a win from a Feyenoord, a Basel, a Salzburg, they're going to be able to jump up and knock Young boys out entirely. So that's something that makes this result a little frustrating, considering they managed to actually hang around in this game. Roma against Stuttgart. We get 2 power league teams matching up against each other. Roma, just a vintage Europa League team, vintage Europa League performance. They find 2 goals in what was a very even match overall. There was not a lot to separate these 2 teams, but it was a swing match. The winner of this match is going to be in the top 8. The loser of this match has work to do. The winner being Roma, they are now 6th in the table, going into the final match with a 1-point cushion over 9th place. They go on the road to Greece. Roma could win that. Wouldn't be stunned if they did. Also wouldn't be stunned if they lost. Right? Panathinaikos, dangerous team. Not only are they a dangerous team, they've got something to play for. They're trying to become a seeded team. in the playoff situation as well. It's about the same level of things that you'd care about. You're trying to get the bye. You're trying to get a seeded spot. I mean, they can't really get the bye all the way from this position, Panathinaikos, but it'll still be a good match, and Roma is going to have their hands full trying to deal with them. For Stuttgart, coming off this loss, they're at home against Young Boys. Just mentioned that, obviously. That is a very winnable match. If they can get to 15 points, they can reasonably threaten all the way up to Roma on this table and play their way into the top 8. They're a team that, even though they're pretty far down, this group of PAOK, Celta, Vigo, and Stuttgart have a real chance to jump into the top 8 if they can get a good result. Braga against Nottingham Forest, absolute disaster class for Nottingham Forest. Morgan Gibbs-White misses a penalty. Then the captain, Ryan Yates, gives up an own goal a minute later, and Braga out of Portugal picks up a win over a Premier League side, which is not a good look. Now, I mentioned Premier League side should be delivering a top 8 performance in the Europa League. Nottingham Forest has not done that. They'd won back-to-back matches to kind of assuage the fear of them not even making it to the playoff, but this loss means that they are going to have to battle on the final day in order to get a seeded spot in the playoff position. They are basically not going to be able to get into the top 8 anymore. They're at home against Ferencvaros, which is going to be one of the matches to watch. Hungary's Ferencvaros has been one of the surprise teams of this tournament. Obviously, you see a Hungarian team contending for a top 8 in a Europa League stage. That's going to be something that gets your attention. Ferencvaros, they've got their work cut out for them, even though Nottingham Forest has not been playing at full strength. If they can get at least a point, you'd like Ferencvaros' odds to be able to hang on to a top 8 finish, which would be absolutely remarkable for them. A point will likely... maybe, but most likely not be enough to keep Nottingham Forest in the seeded half of the playoff draw. If Nottingham Forest ends up in the unseeded half, that is a pretty abysmal showing from them so far in the Europa League. At least they would still be alive. Another matchup of Power League teams, Celta Vigo and Lille. Celta Vigo delivering a 2-1 win and a victory for Spain. Particularly remarkable considering they got an early red card in the 29th minute. Fortunately for them, Williat Swedberg, former Football Manager wonder kid, scored in the opening minute of the match. They're able to kind of squeeze down and hang on to this result. Actually doubled it up in the 69th before a late goal from Lille and Olivier Giroud added some jeopardy back into the match. Definitely a disappointing result for Lille. They've been great in Europe in the past, but I mean, look at this. The XG is nearly the same. These guys didn't have they had one less player for an hour. That's a terrible effort from Lille. Celta Vigo with this win guarantees a spot in the playoff. They'll be playing for seeding. If they win and a bunch of things go their way on the road against Red Star, they do have the chance to jump into the top 8, but they're going to have to rub their lucky pennies together in order to make that happen. With this loss, Lille has now lost 4 of its last 5 matches in the Europa League. They are limping across the finish line, and they've got a home match against Freiburg that if they lose, it is possible Lille does not make it into the playoff at all, which would be a massive failure for a team from the French league to miss out on the Europa League playoff altogether in favor of clubs like Plzen and Dinamo Zagreb and Panathinaikos and Fenerbahce and Brann, which would probably be there as well. Like, Lille has got a tough ask. Freiburg in the last match. And if they don't get any points from that, there is a real danger that they could plummet out. All you would need is Brann, Young Boys, Celtic, and Ludogorets to produce a win, and Lille would be out on points, no goal difference needed. Likely? No. Horrifyingly possible? Absolutely. Because Young Boys and Brann would only need a draw in that scenario. And you just need a Celtic and Ludogorets win, Young Boys and Brann with at least a draw, and they're gone. Speaking of teams that Premier League clubs shouldn't be finishing behind, Dinamo Zagreb, the talent factory out of Croatia, delivered 2 goals in the first 11 minutes to suplex FCSB, who apparently was a one-hit wonder last year. This win for Dinamo Zagreb puts them in an absolutely fantastic position, considering where they were after 3 losses. They are basically guaranteed in the playoff positions, which is something they would have shaken your hand off for earlier. FCSB with this loss, like Lille, has lost 4 of its last 5. They're at home, as we mentioned way earlier, against Fenerbahce. They will struggle to be able to win that match, but if they can, they have a chance to jump into that playoff section. There is the section of faint hope here with a bunch of teams on 6 points, of which FCSB is one, of which Feyenoord is one, but we have not met the other teams in that spot yet. We will meet them soon. Ferencvaros with a 1-1 draw against Panathinaikos. This is a match Ferencvaros would have loved to have won. They had the lead in the second half off a penalty at home, and they were just not able to finish it. The 86th minute, Panathinaikos finds an equalizer. If Ferencvaros had won this, they would have been on 17 points, by the way. And if they look back and they're unable to actually get a result at Nottingham Forest that puts them in the top 8, they only have themselves to blame for this draw. This was the open door. This was the opportunity to get to 17 points and put themselves basically out of reach of failing to make it into the top 8. For Panathinaikos, this draw is huge, as it means they are mathematically qualified for the playoff round. They're just trying to get a result in their last match, which is that match against Roma, in order to move into the seeded half of the draw. And I'd back them to be able to give that a nice go. Nice with the 3-1 win against Go-Ahead Eagles. This is a feel-good win for them. 2-0 up at the half. Pretty comfortable cruise. Go-Ahead Eagles have looked mostly outclassed in Europe. They did a good job of keeping the ball in this match. They had 65% possession, particularly running that up in the second half, even though Nice was the team that was actually getting the chances. This is actually, upon further investigation, I remembered seeing this earlier, but I wanted to make sure, their first trip into an actual European group stage. It's felt like that for them, and they've fallen into this 6-point position after 4 straight losses, where if they go out and win in their final match, they have a chance. They're at home against Braga. Braga's good. And Braga is obviously part of a jumbled up mess up here where they're trying to hang on to a top 8 position. So it's not like they're going to waltz out the C team and let Go-Ahead Eagles pick up a win here. They are the team with the faintest heartbeat, but they've managed to stay alive, which, to be fair, is better than Nice. The reason I said this was a feel-good result for Nice is because they have not had a nice time so far in the Europa League. They were literally bottom of the table after losing their first 6 matches. Who the hell knows what was happening with them? I probably should do more of an investigation to figure it out, because you just don't see teams from a top 5 league just play that poorly, that consistently. But they played like a team from a top 5 league and got their 3 points and got their, paycheck for winning a match in the Europa League. So good for them. They picked themselves up off the mat and got a result. Rangers, I was dumping on them earlier. They actually did win their match today. They won 1-0 with a first half goal in the Ibrox. But unfortunately for Rangers, this does not keep the dream alive. They are stopped at 4 points. They have, like Nice, pulled themselves up off the canvas and let Maccabi Tel Aviv, Malmo, and Utrecht rot at the bottom of the table. But the real result here was the fact that Ludogorets lost, because this loss makes it very difficult for Ludogorets to get into the playoff positions. They now have to play Nice. And even though Nice is not playing well, that is a team from a power league. Ludogorets' final match is against Nice, who's playing with house money and just won their last match 3-1, and Ludogorets needs a result. If Celtic loses, a draw is good enough for Ludogorets to get into the playoff, as long as none of these teams wins, which, to be honest, is a very real possibility. Outside of that, Ludogorets needs to win. Now, they're at home, that helps. Nice has played really poorly in this tournament in the past, that helps. But Nice also is more talented than that record would indicate. So very frustrating result for Ludogorets. You look back to their previous match as well, a 3-3 shootout draw against PAOK Thessaloniki. If they'd managed to actually win either of those matches instead of finding a way to not win them, then Ludogorets would be in a very different position, but the Bulgarian Giants are staring up. Salzburg kept itself alive with a 3-1 win at home against Basel out of Switzerland. The 3 goals hit early. This was not a match full of parity. It was 3-0 in 35 minutes. Austria waking up at least a little bit as Salzburg becomes the highest Austrian team in the table. That also knocks Basel down to next to them. They are now tied at 6 points. They are 2 of the teams in this run. Basel has lost 3 straight to Genk, Aston Villa, and Salzburg to just go flying and tumbling out of playoff positions. Now Basel needs to clutch up and find a way to beat a team in Victoria Plzen that literally has not lost in this tournament so far. And on the flip side, Salzburg is at Aston Villa. So even though they won this match and kept themselves alive, and the Salzburg of old, you might even back to get a result at Villa, Villa is guaranteed through. Well, there's some silver lining in that, because Aston Villa might rotate. It also means you're playing against a very good team, and you're on the road, and you're playing a Premier League, a Premier League title contending type team on the road. Salzburg chances is very slim. I don't like the chances really of any of the teams that are trying to play out of this position. FCSB is overmatched against Fenerbahce. Go-Ahead Eagles has a bear in Braga to deal with. Feyenoord's on the road against Real Betis. I hope I'm wrong. There is the opportunity for a ton of crazy drama if one of these teams can pull off an upset. I just don't see it. And then the final Europa League match was Genk finding 2 second-half goals to win at Utrecht in a little lowlands derby between a team from Belgium and a team from the Netherlands. This win puts Genk very sneakily, very, very sneakily into the race for a top 8 finish. Now, all Genk needs to do is beat Malmo. Again, this is one of the teams I really like to actually finish in the top 8. Like, Genk is going to be able to punish Roma, Ferencvaros, or Real Betis if they underperform, because Genk's probably going to beat Malmo. Malmo's been terrible. And Genk has just snuck itself up into 10th and could get itself a bye. And a bye would be an incredible performance for Genk to get themselves to the round of 16 of the Europa League as a seeded team. For Utrecht, they, on the other hand, as you've probably figured out by now because I've mentioned it before, they're on 1 point. They're out. They were out before this match was played. It's just... Sometimes it's not your day. It was not Utrecht's day, but we are now fully set up for what should be a dramatic final day around the top 8 positions. Maybe a dramatic final day in terms of who gets in the playoff. At the very least, the Celtic subplot is sure to be a stressful one.